but he's that guy.
He's him.
He's him. He's the GOAT. And welcome back, everybody, to the BaseLINE podcast. I'm your host, Ben Newman. Now, guys, if you know me, obviously you know I love the NBA, and some big stuff just happened at the time of this recording. The NBA trade deadline was today. Also, we've seen a lot of All-Star stuff as well. So we are going to bring on one of my best friends in the entire world, who is a huge diehard Warriors fan. Please welcome my special guest, Tyler Berger. He's got the hoodie. Tyler, thanks for coming on, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's a great time to be here.
Of course, a lot of stuff has happened in the NBA, so I thought who better have on than, the person I talk about the NBA the most with. So you got your Warriors hoodie on. I got my awesome new Jazz jacket, and we're going to talk some basketball.
Love to hear it.
Now, to start things off, obviously, like we just mentioned, the NBA trade deadline was today at the time of this recording, and there are some major moves going on. We'll quickly go through some of the smaller ones. George Hill is back on the Pacers. The last time he was on the Pacers was when they were really good with that Paul George era, Roy Hibbert, Lance Stevenson era. So he is now back on the Pacers. The Thunder got Justin Jackson and 2 second-round picks for Mike Muscala, who is now going to be on the Celtics. The Blazers and the Hornets also made a trade. Matisse Thybulle is now going to the Blazers. The Hornets get Svi Mykhailiuk, and I'm sorry, this was actually a 3-team trade with the Sixers as well, who get Jaden McDaniels. On top of that, Raptors bring back Jakob Poeltl, the team that drafted him and then traded him to the Spurs in that big DeMar DeRozan trade. They get him back, and the Spurs get Kem Birch and a protected first. And then the Blazers now receive Cam Reddish in exchange for Josh Hart. Now, some of the more, slightly bigger ones I want to talk a little bit briefly about. The Lakers and Nuggets also made a trade. The Nuggets received Thomas Bryant, who's going to be a pretty solid backup center for Nikola Jokic. And the Lakers bring on Devon Reed, who, if you don't know about Devon Reed, he was on the Gold last year, who I interned with last season, and he is most known for guarding LeBron James. Just absolutely amazing defensive player. He's going to be a good player for that team. After that, Tyler, we're going to start to bring you on now because we have an interesting 3-team trade that happened today where between the Pistons, the Warriors, and the Hawks, where the Pistons received James Wiseman, 2nd overall pick. He's been injured, we haven't really seen a lot from him, but he's starting to get healthier. Where now the Hawks also bring on Saddiq Bey, and the Warriors received 5 second-round picks and Kevin Knox. But the Warriors then made a trade with the Trailblazers to bring on Gary Payton II back to the Warriors in exchange for those 5 picks and Kevin Knox. Tyler, what do you think about this trade, just to start you off?
Well, I think it's a good trade. I mean, obviously, you hate to see Saddiq Bey move on because he's got good size and good shooting for his position. I think he's a good young star. I hope he does well in Atlanta. That being said, as a Warriors fan, you love to see Gary Payton II back in the Bay. He was a wonderful piece for the Dubs last year. He's so versatile. Offense, defense, can play out of the dunker spot. He basically plays like a big man in the Warriors system. And that's pretty valuable long term if the Warriors are looking to go into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who grew up in Michigan, I like Saddiq Bey a lot. I really didn't want us to trade him, but he got traded, and he's now gonna be on a Hawks team that potentially needed some more shooting, and he can play the 3. He can play a stretch 4 as well. The biggest surprise with the Hawks is, there were so many talks about, John Collins, just like so many issues with the team. Like he needs to get traded. And for the 2nd season in a row, he has not gotten traded. So I think that's going to be very interesting. Possibly see him. I don't know when his contract is up, but, I think once he becomes a free agent, he's not going to be a Hawk anymore. And what do you think about James Wiseman on the Pistons? What do you think about that fit? Obviously, you've been watching him for a few seasons, or I guess not watching him since he's been hurt so often. But what do you think about that fit?
Honestly, I think I really like that fit for him. I think James Wiseman is a pretty unique talent. But at the end of the day, the Warriors are looking to win now, and I just don't think that fits with James Wiseman's timeline.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Like,
especially just he has had those injuries, and with the Pistons really having this young roster and trying to just build up this young roster, I think it really could be good for him to just be able to really grow with the rest of these young guys as well, for sure.
absolutely. And I think looking at the report from the trade, it seems like the Pistons are going to be starting James Wiseman. So I think that gives him the chance to have a lot of run for some growth and really developing his skills.
Now, going off of that, we do have another three-team trade between the Pacers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks received Jay Crowder from the Brooklyn Nets, who just got traded, and we'll discuss that one in a little bit. But the Bucks received Jay Crowder, an amazing role player. Was great for the Suns, but didn't work out, and finally is off that team. Brooklyn receives a few picks, and the Pacers receive Serge Ibaka and Jordan Nwora. I don't know much about Jordan Nwora, but obviously Serge Ibaka can still be a pretty solid rim protector at his age. That would be pretty good paired with Miles Turner. And the Bucks get another piece to try to go for another championship run.
I think Jay Crowder is a very good 3-and-D player. I think he adds some good depth to their forward positions in Milwaukee. Um, and Jay Crowder, he can be a little bit streaky at times when shooting, but when he gets hot, he gets hot. And I think that's something that you can always put value on.
Off of that as well, this one is I find very interesting. I feel like the common theme of this year's trade deadline is a lot of players just going back to a previous team, and this one's kind of the same. Between the Grizzlies, Clippers, and Rockets, the Grizzlies get Luke Kennard, a really great shooter. He's going to add some good shooting depth for them. The Clippers receive Eric Gordon, who, if you don't remember, is the team that drafted Eric Gordon back in 2008. So it's been a while, but he's back on the Clippers. And the Rockets received Danny Green, who, to be honest, I didn't realize he was still in the league. But they also received John Wall, who was just there, like a season and a half ago, and it didn't work out then. I don't really understand what the Rockets are trying to do here. What do you think?
Well, I think it's fun to bring up players going back to their original teams. It's always a fun little nod. As far as the Rockets go, my understanding, John Wall is also likely to be another buyout candidate.
Moving on from that one too, this one made me laugh a little bit. We have a trade between the Magic and the Lakers. We'll get into it a little bit, but the Lakers, just received D'Angelo Russell, and I saw a tweet from one Mr. Patrick Beverly saying, teammates back together because they played in Minnesota together. And then a few hours later, he gets traded to the Magic for Mo Bamba. So I found that very hilarious. But Lakers get a pretty nice center. Obviously, Mo Bamba didn't turn out to the player that people may have thought, but he's still a good rim protector, a good rebounder, and the Magic get a presence. I won't say what kind of presence, but he's a presence.
He's a unique presence, I would say.
For sure. Now, going into the big trades, there was three major trades. One of them happened last night between the Jazz, the Timberwolves, and the Lakers. I'll be honest, it kind of hurts me to read this because, yeah. But the Jazz receive Russell Westbrook, who will most likely also get bought out, as well as two former Warriors, Juan Toscano Anderson, who I know you love, Tyler, and
Absolutely.
and Damian Jones, who hasn't played a lot, to be honest. I don't really know what he can do because he hasn't really gone to show what he can do. But they also receive a Laker 2027 first round pick. Alongside that, the Jazz send Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker over to the Timberwolves, and they also get a Lakers second. And the Lakers get, honestly, the big package of the deal, and that would be D'Angelo Russell, who goes back to the team that drafted him in the Lakers, Jared Vanderbilt, and Malik Beasley. Let's get your thoughts on this first before I put in my little 2 cents.
Well, at the end of the day, I think the Lakers might have gotten away with a little bit here. I think they came out on top of this trade, getting a solid bench shooter in Malik Beasley, as well as a very high motor, high intensity power forward in Jared Vanderbilt. I think they're going to be great pieces for the Lakers. Add a little bit of shooting, maybe. And obviously, D'Angelo Russell, I think, will fit fairly well with LeBron and Anthony Davis. The Lakers need as much shooting as they can get, and I think that's going to be a high focus point for them moving through the rest of the season. Additionally, I like the Mike Conley to the Timberwolves with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think a true point guard will allow Anthony Edwards as well as Karl Anthony Towns and possibly Rudy Gobert to all improve their play. And then, yeah, Russell Westbrook will probably get bought out by the Jazz. But it sounds like he's already got his eyes on maybe a few other landing spots if he does.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an interesting trade. The I'll admit, I was pretty disappointed when you end up working for an NBA team. I'll be honest, you grow pretty attached, and I grew very attached to these players. The Mike Conley piece I saw coming. He's getting old. His contract's pretty large. But the Timberwolves get, like you said, a solid, true point guard that will really be able to facilitate that offense well, I think. And, Nickeil Alexander Walker is also a great guard, a pretty solid wing defender as well. I think that's going to really help them improve. On the Lakers side, I mean, they did it. They got everything they needed to try to make a last minute push to the playoffs. D'Angelo Russell, obviously an amazing scorer. Like you said, Jared Vanderbilt, a huge motor guy. Like I loved watching him play. Never gave up on plays. Malik Beasley, at times was pretty streaky this season, but at the same time, still a very solid volume shooter. I'm gonna really miss him on the team probably the most. Him and his little wiggle that he would do after making a three sometimes. Um, and I don't necessarily know what Danny Ainge is doing, but at the same time, he is one of the greatest front office people in NBA history for a reason. So in Danny we trust, I guess. But moving on to that one too, the Nets decided to completely blow up their team at the deadline and go for a full rebuild. First, we're going to talk about the one that happened a few days prior to the deadline. Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith and a 2029 first-round pick go over to the Nets in exchange for Kyrie Irving. It's going to be really interesting. We saw Kyrie have his first Mavs game last night at the time of this recording, and he played very well alongside Luka. And it's going to be interesting to see what this Mavs team can do. This is the first time we've really been able to see Luka Doncic have another all-star level player alongside him. What do you think?
No, absolutely. Admittedly, I have some concerns about usage rates. They're both pretty high usage guys, so naturally you have some concerns about sharing the ball and having the whole offense humming as one unit. That being said, I know Kyrie Irving is fully capable of playing off the ball. He's a solid spot-up shooter. And I truly believe that with the level of talent between Kyrie and Luka, they'll find a way to make it work through the rest of the season, and then the Mavs will decide if they would like to offer Kyrie a contract at that point or not. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember we've talked about this a lot of times before as well. But it just historically, NBA teams don't normally, they can't normally make that big push to an NBA championship with their two stars being guards. The only exception we have really seen in NBA history, at least in recent times, is your Warriors. But Dame and CJ didn't work out, or obviously Kyrie and James Harden didn't work out. Russell Westbrook and James Harden didn't work out. Chris Paul and James Harden didn't work out. Devin Booker and Chris Paul almost made it work, but it didn't.
Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal also struggled to make it work.
Yeah, and even Bradley Beal and John Wall couldn't make it work. So
Absolutely.
there's just been so many times in history, especially these last few seasons, that we see these two-star guards on the same team and they can make the playoffs and they can make a run for it, but it will almost never work out. And I kind of see that happening with this Mavs team, but I guess we'll have to see. Like I said, it's the first time Luka's ever had a star next to him, so we'll see how he does with it. Finally, moving on to that final trade too, the big blockbuster one. This is probably the biggest one of the season, where the Nets are getting rid of Kevin Durant to the Suns and trading away Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Jay Crowder, who moved on to the Bucks, and 4 future first round picks. A huge package for the Nets. I mean, their future is pretty set, honestly, and they get really solid young pieces in Mikal Bridges, one of the best two-way wings in the league, and Cam Johnson, who's been injured this year, but he's a really solid young piece that I think any team could really use.
Oh, absolutely. Mikal Bridges, as you said, is one of the premier two-way wings in the league, I would say. He finished top 3 last year in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Additionally, with the Suns, I think not only Kevin Durant, but also TJ Warren included on that trade will be a big piece for them. It offers some more wing depth that they might be missing from either Cam or Mikal Bridges. And we've seen that TJ Warren, when he gets hot, we all remember the bubble season.
Bubble TJ was goated.
He absolutely was. He was Bubble Jordan.
He was Bubble Jordan, Bubble TJ. It's gonna be interesting. The Suns have had a pretty rough season this year. Obviously, they've had a lot of injuries. Devin Booker's only played 30 games. Chris Paul's old. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't send DeAndre Ayton in that package deal. We've heard so much about him just not wanting to be there. The Suns seem to have matched that contract in the offseason kind of just out of necessity. They didn't really have another center, so they matched that Pacers contract and brought him back. But they now bring on one of the best scorers in NBA history, who's also been injured this year. But when he's played, he's been an MVP candidate. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they can do and if they can actually push it to a playoff run.
Absolutely. When healthy, Kevin Durant is a top 5 player in the league, I would say. Then just looping back around to your DeAndre Ayton point, it did seem like it was a necessity offer at the time. But you have to assume, given that he wasn't included in the Kevin Durant trade, that they're really committed to keeping him on the team and really trying to make it work out. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes for them through the second half of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that's all the trades, and honestly, like overall, this has been one of the more active NBA trade deadlines we've seen in a while. Like overall, just what are your thoughts on the deadline this year?
It was a very active trade deadline. I'd say from my recent memories, it's one of the more active that I can think of. And I feel like we saw a lot of moves leading to moves. Obviously, being a Warriors fan, the first thing that I think of is the 2 or 3 trades that took place leading up to the Warriors acquiring Gary Payton II from the Trailblazers. But even in the case of Jay Crowder, it seems like that was also the case. He was traded from Phoenix to Brooklyn before being moved on again. And that's what we like to see as NBA fans. At least that's what I like to see. The trade deadline is an exciting time to be a fan, and it really helps me stay engaged in the dog days of the season. I mean, these are the hard parts right before we get to the All-Star break. It's kind of no man's land in terms of scheduling.
No, I mean I absolutely agree. It's an exciting time. Final thoughts for me, Mike, Malik, Nikhil, and Jared. I'm gonna miss you guys very, very much, especially you, Malik. But yeah, excited for the rest of the season. The Jazz will probably be tanking the rest of the season, from what I can gauge, and we'll see if they can get lucky in the lottery.
Danny Ainge always has a plan.
He always has a plan, man. But moving on from that, obviously the All-Star weekend is coming right around the corner. It's next weekend, and obviously, very exciting time, All-Star Week, one of the best times in the NBA, and it just so happens to be coming to Salt Lake. So I don't have the same access as the higher ups. I won't be able to attend, but best believe I'm going to be driving around looking for celebrities all weekend.
Absolutely.
But going to that, here's kind of what the All Star game's looking like right now. We have from the starters: Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, Kyrie, Nikola Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, and Zion Williamson. And then as far as the bench goes, Bam Adebayo, Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan, Joel Embiid, Paul George, Shea Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton, Drew Holiday, Jaren Jackson Jr., Damian Lillard, Larry Markin, John Morant, Julius Randle, and Domantas Sabonis. But the big questions to start out before we really get into it, Katie and Zion and Steph Curry have all confirmed to be out for the All-Star game, so that's going to be 3 replacements that we need. With that being said, I do want to bring in just kind of possible replacements and or just, the biggest snubs of NBA All-Star. And there's honestly, this has been the most snubs that I've really seen in a long time. We're gonna start with the West, and for me, the biggest one is De'Aaron Fox. This is the first time in 20 plus years that the Kings have been good, have been relevant. They are currently sitting at the 3rd seed at the time of this recording, and it is something that nobody ever saw coming. Domantas Sabonis has had a good season. He's proven to be a good player for that Kings system, and De'Aaron Fox, his play just keeps going up and up, and that's why he's the biggest snub for me. But I know you have another opinion on a West guard for being the biggest snub, so we're gonna move it on to you and see who you think.
Well, first off, I'd like to agree with your statement on Domantas Sabonis. While I'm personally not the biggest fan of Domantas Sabonis, you can't deny talent. Stats don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Talent doesn't lie. I won't deny greatness. Moving forward, though, I think that Anthony Edwards was a pretty big snub from the All-Star team this year, and it's entirely possible that both De'Aaron Fox and Anthony Edwards will be named as replacements. We don't know at this time. That being said, Anthony Edwards is averaging 20, almost 25 points on the season, 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and numbers like that, especially missing other big players in the system like Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert is not always available. I think that's impressive play from the young guard. I think it's something that he's really been able to kind of keep the team afloat in the absence of some of the other key players for their roster.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in that that core, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert, he has been the healthiest. The other two have only played about 20 to 30 games this season, not that many games, and Anthony Edwards, 24.6 points per game, and also career highs in points, percentages, rebounds, assists, and steals in only his 3rd season, and with him too, he's always kind of just. I feel like he's always just kind of been under the shadow of LaMelo Ball, the man that got picked 3rd. He also got picked 1st, and he hasn't really been given that same spotlight that LaMelo has. So I think it's really time for him to become an All-Star as well. And moving on from that, just reading into other people's snubs, a lot of people have been saying Aaron Gordon, and this one I understand a little bit less. He is averaging pretty similar stats to someone like Jaren Jackson, who did make the All-Star team. Obviously, the defense isn't as good as Jaren Jackson, but 17 points per game, career high shooting, and I understand it because it's kind of become custom that whoever is the 1st seed in the West or East, they normally do get multiple All-Stars, but this wasn't the case. Nikola Jokic only being the Nuggets' only All-Star, but if they do get another All-Star, I feel like Jamal Murray personally would be my pick over Aaron Gordon. He came back from this major injury, and he's playing really well. 20 points per game, career high in assists at nearly 6. Like, he's had a great season, and I think he personally deserves more recognition than Aaron Gordon. But what do you think about that one?
I tend to agree with you, Ben. Just based on limited availability this season due to his significant injury. I think given more time, he absolutely could put up all-star level numbers. He's got the talent, and I think he just needs the availability and the opportunity.
Absolutely. And going off of that, two other snubs that people were talking about, Anthony Davis and Devin Booker, but both only played 30 games. But at the same time, Zion got voted as an All-Star starter, and he's played about the same amount of games. So, two other players that I thought I would just quickly mention that I personally thought, could be snubs. One is kind of a surprise, Jeremy Grant, and he got moved from the Pistons to the Trailblazers in the offseason, and I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to have that same production that he broke out with on the Pistons, but he's only averaging 2 points less than he did when he broke out with the Pistons, 20.7 points a game. So he was one I thought I'd mention, and then CJ McCollum, the man that has been an All-Star snub for at least 5 seasons now. He's been truly the only healthy piece on that Pelicans team. Brandon Ingram's been out with injuries on and off, so is Zion, of course. But 21.3 points per game, good shooting, career highs in assists with 6. He's always gonna be a major snub in my eyes, personally.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's been a very critical piece to that New Orleans team. I think he's been great leadership for that New Orleans team. But as you said, I think it doesn't stop at the leadership. He puts up significant production when he gets on the floor, and that's something that I tend to agree with you. I think at some point I do hope he gets that All-Star nod because I think he's put in the work to earn it.
Absolutely. If honestly, like, I mean, it's the case with like all these West guards. If any of these guards were in the East, they probably would be named an All-Star. I'm not saying that the guards in the East are bad, but there's just a crazy level in the West, and unfortunately, they can't make it with how much talent is in the West.
Absolutely. It's tough to compete with other guards such as Steph Curry and Luka Doncic. I mean, just to name a few or just to name a couple.
Now, moving on to the East, I'd say the two most notable snubs, and with Kevin Durant being injured, I feel like one of these two players could be that All Star replacement. But I have Jimmy Butler and Pascal Siakam. Jimmy Butler, does what Jimmy Butler does best, and that's pretty much everything, honestly. 22 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.1 steals on 52% shooting from the field. He's been leading this Heat team for a while. He led that Heat team to the finals just 2 years ago, and I don't see why he wouldn't be an All Star. I mean, Bam made it, and Bam is having a fantastic season, but the Heat would be nowhere without Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Jimmy Butler it's hard to imagine a world where Jimmy Butler does not get named a replacement for one of the All Stars in the East.
Definitely. And moving on to Pascal Siakam, once again, kind of like Domantas Sabonis, we're not the biggest Pascal Siakam fans. I'll admit it. But he's having a fantastic season. Career highs in points and assists, 24.7 per game, 6.2 assists per game, and 8 rebounds. He's having one of the best years of his career, even better than his most improved season. And when he got most improved player, he was an all-star starter, which is still crazy to think about. But he obviously, the Raptors have struggled. I really thought that they would possibly make a move getting rid of OG Anunoby or at least Fred VanVleet, but that didn't happen. So what do you think about this one as well?
I'm kind of with you. I heard a lot of talk of possibly moving OG or Fred VanVleet. Obviously, like you said, we didn't see any of that today. That being said, those stats are what you want to see from your top talent on your team. And as a big man like that, being able to average assists in bulk it's not a super common talent from your centers or your power forwards, but it's always appreciated in the grand scheme of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And moving on to that, I'm gonna bring you back, Tyler. Who are maybe some other players that you think maybe got snubbed in the East?
Well, Ben, when I think of players in the East who could possibly be named All Stars or who are playing at that All Star level, it's one of the names that comes to mind for me is Darius Garland. I think the Cavs team is humming along. They're doing great playing together. I like the Donovan Mitchell, the Darius Garland backcourt pairing together. We've seen that Donovan Mitchell was named an All-Star starter, and for me, I think that Darius Garland could have just as easily been an All-Star with him.
Absolutely, I agree. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell getting traded to the Cavaliers in the offseason. Honestly, one of the very few times I feel like a trade happened and both teams won. The Cavaliers obviously getting a fantastic player in Donovan Mitchell, who is honestly possibly having his best season ever. I mean, he scored a 70-point game this season, which is just nuts. And the Jazz got great pieces. Ochai Agbaji, who's a rookie this season, he's been playing great. Colin Sexton is a great motor point guard, and then obviously the rising of Lauri Markkanen, who became an All-Star. Let's go, boy! It's been great to see, and alongside a player like Darius Garland, I mean, I agree. He's averaging some amazing stats: 22 points per game, 8.1 assists, 1.3 steals, shooting 46 from the field, 41.5 from the three, and I also have written here, all these numbers are either career highs or within zero point 0.5 of being a career high, and that's insane to bring on a star like Donovan Mitchell and still be producing as well as he is this season. He is definitely a major snub in my opinion as well. But alongside that, you also have, you have players that are also been considered snubs. I mean, Jalen Brunson is one for the Knicks. He's obviously had a great season after a fantastic performance in the playoffs last year. People always say James Harden. He has had a good season. His shooting numbers are slowing down as he gets older. The two guards on the Hawks are another one I want to bring up. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Trae Young is averaging nearly 27 points per game, 10 assists, which is a career high, but his shooting is way down. His production's not there. Numbers as low since his rookie season, and that's kind of crazy to see. But DeJounte Murray, 21 points per game. He's shooting 4% better from the three than he did last year, which is nuts. Obviously, his rebounds and assists are down the season, but that's going to come when you're not the lead man on the team. So, what do you think about those two?
Absolutely. To kind of continue off your last point there, it's also tricky to average rebounds in a system where you have players like Clint Capella and John Collins, Clint Capella is a fantastic rebounder, and I would put John Collins up there with him. I think that's naturally going to hinder your stats a little bit more than playing on a rebuilding team like the Spurs, where, like you said, he was the lead man. He was the guy.
But he's that guy.
He's him.
He's him. He's the GOAT.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why he's the MVP. That's why he's the GOAT. The GOAT.
That's why he's the GOAT.
He's him. He's just him.
Oh, God.
I don't know if NBA defense is just getting better as we progress through the years, but I feel like the defense has been awful this year just because the amount of players that we were seeing between 20 points per game and like 35 is ridiculous. Like, we haven't seen scoring numbers like this in a very long time.
Yeah, the scoring is very high. As I was doing my research before this podcast, I saw that Anthony Edwards, who's averaging 24.7 points per game, is 20th in the league in scoring, and that's insane.
I would say, like, when you average nearly 27 a game like Trae Young does and don't make an All-Star team, that's just crazy. I'm not saying he should over these other players, but like it's just nuts to see. But moving on from that, the last players I want to talk about, another duo. This time in the great land of Washington D.C., where we have the unicorn Kristaps Porzingis and Kyle Kuzma. Kristaps Porzingis, he's finally healthy. He's finally healthy, and we're seeing it, and it's amazing to see. He's played in 45 games this year, which is the most he has in, I want to say, the last 4 seasons, which is also insane. But 22 points per game, 8.6 rebounds, 1.6 blocks. If there's another replacement that's not a forward like Pascal Siakam or Jimmy Butler, I want him in this game. I think he deserves it. It's great to see what he's been able to do this season when he's healthy. And then moving on from that to Kyle Kuzma, His second year on the Wizards, 21 points per game, 7.6 rebounds, 4 assists, which is a career high. He's also playing great. I'm not going to mention Bradley Beal. He's been hurt a lot. But if they all get healthy and put some more pieces, that team could possibly be good next season. Like really surprisingly good.
Absolutely. It seems like Kyle Kuzma is kind of developing into a do-it-all forward. Kristaps knows how to use his size, and you can see that just based on his stats. At 7 foot, he's 7'3", I believe.
I believe he is.
Averaging 22 points per game and 1.6 blocks. I mean, it's clear that he's got the instincts, he's got the talent, and he knows how to use his size to his advantage.
Kind of moving on from that, that's all the snubs we have. But there's, like I said in the beginning, this is kind of the biggest pool of snubs we've ever seen. I don't remember a time where we've just seen this much talent in the NBA, and it's really amazing to see. Even the role players are just fantastic. Whether these guys make it or not, it's gonna be a good All-Star week, and that brings us into the next thing: All-Star events. We're gonna start with the 3-point contest, and not a single player has been confirmed for the 3-point contest yet, but obviously we can probably see usual suspects like Damian Lillard, maybe Buddy Hield. But at the same time, Karl Anthony Towns won it last year in 2022. And that's why I want to see more big men in the 3-point contest. I have written here that I would love to see Lauri Markkanen representing. He's averaging 42% from 3. Since the All-Star week is going to be here, I would love to see him in the 3-point contest. Along with that, I would love to see players like maybe Miles Turner, who's shooting well from 3, or even Nikola Jokic. I would love to see Nikola Jokic in the 3-point contest. But what about you? Who do you think should be in it?
Well, continue on with your trend of big men who can shoot. I'd love to see someone like Kristaps. We were just talking about him, and he's a very solid shooter from outside the arc. Additionally, maybe going off a little bit of my own preference, I would like to see someone like Jordan Poole maybe in the 3-point contest. He's a young stud, and I think he's got the ability to knock it down from deep.
I'm glad you said that, because I do have that one written down. I do want at least one Warrior in the 3-point contest. So Curry, Clay, or Poole. I would prefer Poole just because he hasn't been in it yet. There's times where these kind of lesser talked about players come in the 3-point contest and win it. We've seen like Marco Bellinelli win it before, who I didn't even hear of I've never heard of when he was in it. But with that being said, I'd love to see some of these like 3-point shooting leaders in the 3-point contest as well. My pick is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He's on the Nuggets, former Piston. He is averaging 46% from 3, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then I also have here your favorite man in the world, Damian Lee, who is leading the league in 3-point shooting at 46.8%. So I'd love to see one of those two in it as well.
Oh, absolutely. But Damian Lee, shooting runs in the family.
It runs in the family. If you don't know, Damian Lee is married to Steph Curry's sister. So, but moving on from that too, we also have everybody's favorite dunk contest. I'm gonna be honest, last 2 dunk contests, not amazing. Wasn't necessarily impressed. Last year's winner was Obi Toppin. But we actually have pretty much all confirmed participants in the dunk contest, with Trey Murphy with New Orleans, Jericho Sims, the rookie for the Knicks, Kenyon Martin out of Houston, and for the first time ever, a G League man coming into the NBA for the NBA dunk contest, and that is Mr. Mac McClung. Who do you think is going to win? Who maybe could surprise us? What do you think?
That's a tricky question, because I think they've all got the athleticism to pull off the win. I think it'll come down to a little bit of the creativity when it comes to what kind of dunks we're seeing from players.
Absolutely.
Certainly, I wouldn't count out Mac McClung. I think he's a little bit more athletic than maybe people initially expect just by looking at him. I know Jericho Sims is quite bouncy.
Crazy.
But I think for me, I like Kenyon Martin Jr.'s chances in the dunk contest this year. He's a hyper athletic forward. If you watch any Rockets games, you can quite frequently see Kenyon Martin Jr. throwing down posters. So I think there's going to be some potential for Kenyon Martin Jr. to do something and showcase his athleticism here.
Who watches Rockets games?
I started with if.
Anyways, I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of these players that I haven't really seen dunk before. I mean, Trey Murphy, I haven't really seen a lot from him dunking wise. Kenny Martin also has some good balance, but I know from seeing it, Mac McClung has some freaking crazy bounce. Like it's nuts how high he can jump. And then just being with the Jazz and watching Jericho Simmons against the Jazz. Jericho Simmons is crazy for a 7-foot center. I haven't seen bounce like that from a big guy in a very long time. That's why he's my pick this year. It's really hard to gauge the dunk contest because, like you said, it does come down to creativity. I feel like that is really what we've been lacking the last 2 years is just creativity and seeing things that we haven't seen before. My picks are either Jericho Sims or Mac McClung, personally.
Those are both good picks. Mm-hmm. Can't argue with it.
Now, Tyler, moving on to this next section, as you can see, some things have changed from one section to the other. Can you guess what's changed? You're right. I have lost weight. Thank you so much for noticing. Really appreciate it.
I can't help but notice things. I'm an observant guy.
But no, unfortunately, my camera decided to not shoot this third segment, so we had to shoot a different day. I got a new haircut, though, looking nice and sharp for you guys. Got a new sign in the back. Hopefully you like that one for Allstar. But moving into the last section of this episode, we're going to just kind of talk about, kind of the midway mark predictions on who we think could win what awards and maybe even some predictions on who could win the finals this year. But starting off, I'd like to start off with probably Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year obviously goes to the best first year player, really, and there is one obvious option that probably will win it, but there's still some pretty good options. I mean, the top choice is probably Paolo Banchero, but you also got players like Benedict Mathurin on the Pacers. You have Keegan Murphy on the Kings, Jaden Ivey on the Pistons, and my favorite out of the bunch, Mr. Walker Kessler on the Utah Jazz. But just starting with you, who do you think could win this award, and I guess what are some things that you see in these players that you like?
Well, I think realistically, you're right on the money. I think Paolo is the odds-on favorite to win this for what feels like not obvious, but pretty apparent reasoning. That being said, Benedict Mathurin, he's got the athleticism. He knows how to use the athleticism. He had a big block the other night, which is always something you love to see from what feels like an offensive-minded player. To see them putting in the effort on defense is always going to be encouraging, especially so early on.
Yeah, and just to cut you off too, I mean, not only that, I mean he is a guard. I'm pretty sure he's 6'5", and who doesn't love seeing a guard go up and getting a block?
We love to see him get up.
But what else? Continue on. Maybe who else you like?
I mean, continuing on with the trend of defense, it rolls right into your man, Walker Kessler. He's got instincts for rebounding, blocking. He's 7 feet tall. Correct me if I'm wrong.
7'1", yeah.
Even better, 7'1". He's got the instincts. You can't deny it. He's already had a 2020 game, a 7-block. Has he had more than one 7-block game this season?
He's had 2.
Right there. You can't deny results.
No, absolutely. And going off of that too, I mean, let's be honest. Paolo Banchero most likely will win it. It is very rare to see a rookie average the numbers he is. I mean, 20 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and a steal. Very few rookies average 20 points per game, and so that's an obvious reason on why he probably will win it. But with Walker Kessler, I mean, 2.1 blocks per game. That ranks 4th in the entire NBA as a rookie. That's incredible. Like we just mentioned, 2 7-block games. And the craziest thing about his first 7-block game is he went out, got his 7-block game, and then the very next game, he went for 20 points and 20 rebounds, which you just don't see often from a rookie. While he will not win Rookie of the Year, I do think that he is going to be one of the top-tier centers in this league in the next few years, honestly, as he just keeps growing and growing into this league. But moving on from that now, we also move on to the Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously goes to the best defender in the league. And we have three pretty solid candidates. We have Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies, Nick Claxton from the Brooklyn Nets, and Bam Adebayo from the Miami Heat. I'll start this one off. Jaren Jackson seems to be the front runner so far. I mean, 6 rebounds per game and 3.3 blocks, as well as 1 steal per game. He's filling up the stat sheet, and it shows with him becoming an All-Star for the very first time in his career this season. Nick Claxton, on the other hand, is currently second in the league in blocks, 2.6 per game, 9.2 rebounds, almost a full steal. He's really been a key piece to that Brooklyn team, and honestly, even though the Nets did blow up their team, he's going to be a very major piece in the next future years of the Brooklyn Nets. And then Bam Adebayo, 10 rebounds a game, 0.8 block, 1.2 steals. I know we mentioned this the last time when our camera didn't record it, but he is just an all-around great defender, and a lot of his stuff doesn't really show up on the stat sheet. But what do you like about these guys?
I mean, you're absolutely right. Keeping with the Bam Adebayo trend, a lot of his defense comes in stats that aren't necessarily considered box score counting stats. You're looking at things like percentage against and shots contested. But I truly do think he's one of the better switch bigs in the league. When it comes to shot blocking, it's all about Nick Claxton and Jaren Jackson Jr. They both got amazing numbers as far as box score blocks. I think you're right. Even though Kevin Durant and Kyrie have moved on from Brooklyn, Nick Claxton's going to be I think a cornerstone for them moving forward. He'll be a great big to defend the back line, no matter who you put in front of him. But at 3.3 blocks a game, I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is currently a strong front runner for Defensive Player of the Year.
I'm gonna have to agree with you, and I'm honestly pretty excited for tonight. At the time of recording this segment, the Jazz do play the Grizzlies tonight, so I am very excited to see a block party between Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler. I think it's gonna be fun to see just how many blocks combined they get tonight. But yes, my pick will also be Jaren Jackson as of right now.
Sounds like it's going to be a good matchup tonight, Ben.
Absolutely. But moving on from that, this one's probably the most interesting one, or I guess the hardest one to gauge, because there's been a lot of stuff going around, with the trade deadline and everything. But Sixth Man of the Year, goes to really that spark plug off the bench, the first man off the bench to really get you that scoring. And honestly, it really seemed like it was going to be Russell Westbrook winning his first Sixth Man of the Year. But obviously with this trade from the Lakers to the Jazz, he has not yet played for the Jazz at the time of this recording. There's still a chance he gets bought out, but the Jazz are giving him time to kind of think about and make his own decision. But I mean, if that's the case, he's kind of out of the running. But out of what we do have, the two big ones really are Malcolm Brogdon, who's now in the Celtics, former Rookie of the Year on the Bucks, as well as Norman Powell, who is currently on the Clippers. Brogdon right now averaging 14.4 points per game, 47% from the field, and 45% from the three-point line, one of the best in the league, as well as 4 rebounds, 4 assists per game. Norman Powell, on the other hand, 16.7 points, 48% from the field, and 42% from three. What do you think about these two guys?
As the award suggests, I think they're both dynamic scorers coming off the bench. But personally, I tend to tip the cap towards Brogdon just because he's a reliable veteran who shoots at a very high percentage and doesn't really make too many mistakes with the ball. It's just nice to see for the Celtics off the bench. It gives them, I think, a nice look in their second unit.
I agree, and I also have to give Malcolm Brogdon just the nod there, and mostly because, the Celtics are currently the number 1 seed in the West, in the East. Directions are hard. And I can't remember off the top of my head if the Celtics or the Nuggets have the best record in the entire league, but either way, Malcolm Brogdon is that first piece off the bench for a Celtics team that is dominating the league, and that says a lot, having him be that spark plug off the bench and them still be in first place is really great to see, and that's why he personally has the nod for me.
No, I absolutely agree.
Now, moving on to the one I'm obviously most excited for. We have Most Improved Player. This goes to the player that made the most amount of improvement from the past season to currently. And we have three honestly really solid options. We have Jalen Brunson on the New York Knicks, obviously really dominated in last year's playoffs with the Mavericks, got a big contract with the Knicks, and has so far shown why he deserved that big contract. As well as this, you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, first-time All-Star, 30 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 1 block, 1.7 steals. He really fills up that stat sheet in Oklahoma, and it's crazy because he's already had some really great seasons, and to see him improve even more is crazy. And then, of course, you have my boy from the Utah Jazz, Lauri Markkanen. Had some interesting issues with being in Chicago and being in Cleveland, but now he is the man of the Utah Jazz, and it's really great to see. So what do you think about these three great options?
Ben, for me, I think the way I look at it, it's really down to two options in my mind. I don't know that as great as Jalen Brunson has been playing, I don't know based on his performance in the playoffs last year that I would say this is a big improvement, or potentially not as big as Shai or even Lowry. The way I'm looking at it, Shai's made great improvements. Like you said, he's really filling up the stat sheet in Oklahoma City. But I think I got to give the nod to Lowry here. Being the face of Utah's franchise right now and coming from being a solid third or fourth option for that Cleveland team last year. He's an all-star starter this year. It kind of speaks for itself. To go from being a role player in a great team to averaging numbers like this, can't argue with that.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, sure, I'm a little bit biased, but I did do kind of just like the plus minuses on some of these stats. I mean, Lowry is averaging 6.1 points per game more than his career high. He is also averaging 4% higher from the field and 2.1% higher from three. Shai, on the other hand, 6.3 points per game higher than his career high, zero point 0.2 more blocks, 0.4 more steals. Brunson, 6.9 points, 1.4 assists, and zero point 0.2 more steals. But you really got to look at this way. I mean, I know we talked about this in the last recording, but the NBA defense has really kind of just taken a step back, I feel like, this season. I did some more research after our first recording. Last season, there was only one player in the NBA that was averaging 30 points or more a game, and that was Joel Embiid, where this season, you have 7. So while seeing that Shai is averaging 30 points per game is great, is it really that much of an improvement if every single other player is scoring as much as they are now? So I'm not taking away any credit from Shai. He's a fantastic player, but at the same time, you got to think about how many more players are averaging 30 points per game, and maybe he just kind of fell into that category because of the lack of defense this season. But obviously, my pick is Lauri Markkanen. The amount of improvement that I've been able to see watching every game this season has been amazing. He really did seem like a future piece for that Bulls team, and then Jim Boylan kind of screwed up those plans, traded to Cleveland, had a little bit of a resurgence, but really is the guy now in Utah. Now, moving on to the final award, we of course have MVP, the best player in the league during the season, and we have some good options. I mean, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, all fantastic players, all somewhat deserving of an MVP at some point in their career, I personally believe. But let's start off with you. Who are some of these players that really stick out to you that could win it?
Well, Ben, just thinking about it, like you said, scoring is up this year. Everyone is, well, okay, maybe not everyone, but there are a number of players averaging more than 30 points a game. So when I'm thinking about the MVP, I think I have to think about some of the other categories that stand out. And really the big one that stands out to me is the Joker. Nikola Jokic is averaging a 25-point triple-double, if I'm not mistaken. So while that's not as much scoring, I think it brings the rebounding, the assist numbers, and potentially some defensive numbers as well that adds more to the box score than just filling up the points.
I agree, and it's been really crazy to see what Nikola Jokic has been doing. Honestly, I didn't think he'd be able to improve from his last two MVP seasons. Do I think he's going to win MVP? I don't know, and this is only based on the fact that most of the time they don't like having three-time champions. Most of the time players win two in a row and then they move on to somebody else. But I don't see another way out of this where Jokic doesn't win it. I mean, 24.7 points per game. Obviously, that's not a career high, but 64% from the field, 11.3 rebounds, 10.2 assists. The field goal percentage and the assist numbers both career highs. And also, you got to think about this. This is finally a fully healthy Nuggets team, and it kind of shows what they can really do when they're fully healthy. Jamal Murray's back from his big injury. Michael Porter Jr. is back from his major injury. They had a good piece last season, like Aaron Gordon, who was considered an All-Star snub this year. This Nuggets team is dangerous, and I would be very surprised if Jokic doesn't win it. But going off of that, there are still some really great options. I mean, Joel Embiid, 33 points per game. Him and Luka Doncic are currently tied for most points per game. But he's shooting 53% from the field, 36 from three, 10.2 rebounds. And then Luka Doncic as well, again, 33.4 points per game, 50% from the field, 35% from three. All three of those stats career highs, as well as 8.9 rebounds and 8.2 assists. It's going to be interesting because, with the addition of Kyrie Irving, the Mavericks have been doing pretty solid so far since that addition, and it's going to be really nice to see Luka finally with another All-Star caliber player, an All-NBA caliber player as well. So I think if the race does get close at the end, I think it could be between Jokic and Doncic, personally.
I tend to agree, Ben. Just seeing what Luka's doing, averaging those kinds of numbers, it's really special to see. The only reason that I think I might edge Luka over Joel for me personally is that at 7'2", I believe, 10 rebounds a game is what I would expect from Joel Embiid. It's as the 7'2" face of the Sixers franchise, that's his job. But I'm looking for how much can you add to the game? How can you prove that you are the most valuable? And I think that comes in more than just points and rebounds. I think typically we see MVPs that have more than one or two stats that are really contributing to success from start to finish in each game. The only thing I will say about Luka is after seeing the end of the Mavericks Timberwolves game the other night, it feels like Luka and Kyrie still have a little bit of kind of figuring out how to coexist in that backcourt together. Anthony Edwards and Jalen McDaniels really locked them up, and it just seemed like they weren't sure who should be taking that last shot.
The thing is that they are both players that can make that final shot. No doubt in my mind. But they are also players that are not selfish. They don't mind passing the ball up in those big moments if a player is open. But again, like you mentioned, it's something they're gonna have to figure out. It's their first time playing together. They've only played, not even a handful of games together yet. They gotta work on chemistry, and that will come as more games are played. And if they decide to re-sign Kyrie in the offseason, they can build on that more,
Absolutely. It's something that takes time.
Yeah. But I think we can both agree that our picks as of right now are Nikola Jokic winning his third MVP in a row.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that statement.
Moving on to the very last thing before we end this episode, we're going to make some predictions on who we maybe think could win the NBA Finals. And Tyler, we're going to start with you. We're not going to predict the final standings because the West is way too close. The Nuggets sit at the 1 seed currently. The Celtics sit at the 1 seed on the East side. Who are some teams that you think we could see in the conference finals or even win the title?
Being that we're recording this on Wednesday, the 15th, last night we saw the Celtics play the Bucks. I think that could potentially be an Eastern Conference Finals matchup. It was a game that went into overtime and was decided by just a few points. It's entirely possible that we could see the Cavaliers make their way into the Eastern Conference Finals. They've been playing very well this season. But as for the West, like you said, it's a very close race from top to bottom. It's a few games difference from, I believe, fourth to 14th or fourth to 12th.
Fourth to 13th, honestly. Yeah.
It's just a couple of games. So really, right now, it feels like anyone's race. As far as I'm concerned, some teams to watch are obviously the Nuggets because they are just balling this year. The Clippers are looking great after their trade deadline acquisitions. And I'm never going to bet against my Warriors. If they can make the playoffs, I think they've got the experience to grind it out, even though it would be tough.
It would be. I remember the first recording, even though I got messed up. You did say that you were going to predict that the Warriors would win it, though.
Absolutely. I think if they get Gary Payton II back healthy in time, anything is possible, just like Kevin Garnett said.
I mean, going off of that, you also got to think about, you know, a team like the Kings, who are going to make the playoffs for the first time in 20 plus years. It's been fantastic to see. I did have my doubts with how Fox and Sabonis would work together, but they've proven me very, very wrong. They are currently sitting at the third seed. They play fantastic. They definitely could be a surprise team. Along with that, the Grizzlies, they could, beat their way to the finals. Shout out Shannon Sharp. And then obviously you got the Suns, a team that has been very up and down this season, but with the acquisition of Kevin Durant, once he gets back on the court, who knows what they can do. I mean, Kevin Durant is a generational player, and it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen there. As far as the East goes, I agree with you. I think out of the options, I think it will be Celtics, Bucks, or Cavaliers making it to that finals game. I could potentially see Milwaukee try to get their revenge on the Celtics for beating them out last year. Obviously, you can never count the Heat out as well. Jimmy Butler, when it comes to playoffs, is an absolute beast. But going off of that, who are your official picks on who you think could go to the finals?
Ooh, Ben, that is a tough question. I think in the East, I'm gonna go with the Bucks. I don't think Giannis and crew are gonna take their loss last year laying down. I think they're coming back looking for revenge. But the West, man, it is close. It's really anyone's game. I have some concerns about teams that maybe don't have enough playoff experience. I think if the Kings do snap their playoff streak, I worry that, like the Grizzlies last year, they could see an early exit just due to not having the experience. That being said, I think it's entirely possible that we could see. This is hard. If everyone can stay healthy, I think I like Denver making it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think, honestly, those are my two picks as well. I think those are the two best options. And, man, would I love to see a Giannis versus Jokic NBA Finals. I think that would be so cool to see. I agree with you with the playoff experience. I think it would be a fantastic story if the Kings made it to the finals. But like you said, playoff experience matters. And Domantas Sabonis is almost the only player on that team that really has experience. That you could say Kevin Huerter when he was on the Hawks. But they don't have a lot of experience. So that could be challenging. But I think I will have to go with that Jokic-Giannis matchup. I would just absolutely love to see that. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, if my history is correct, I'm pretty sure the Nuggets have never won a championship before. That would be great. That would be a great story to see. On the other hand, obviously the Bucks won it just 2 years ago. It would be cool to see Giannis win his second. championship. I mean, the Celtics could be a shout too. The Celtics fans have been crying for a championship since 2008. So it's gonna be a tough battle all around, and maybe Tatum wants his revenge. But I think my official pick is also gonna be Nuggets Bucks.
Ben, I think no matter how you slice it this year, the playoffs are going to be exciting to watch.
Absolutely. Especially that Western play-in tournament. That's going to be insane. Whatever team makes it there, it's going to be crazy. And God, I hope it's not Warriors Jazz. God, I hope it's not Warriors Jazz. That is going to wrap all this up. NBA All-Star Weekend is this weekend. Starting Friday, ending Sunday. I am very excited. I will be driving all around town since I technically cannot go into the event. I will be driving around and looking for not All-Stars. I'll be looking for celebrities all weekend. But Ty, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Always a good time talking basketball with you. And it's great to bring your expertise, even if some of them are a little biased. But mine are too, so it's okay.
I was going to say, it was absolutely a great time to be here. Thank you for having me, and we can both be a little biased together, Ben.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on twice to finish this episode with me. Really appreciate it, buddy.
Third time's a charm. I can't wait.
Third time's a charm. Awesome. Thanks.
Yep.
That's going to wrap everything up for us today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the BaseLINE podcast. Thank you so much to my good buddy Tyler Berger for coming on and talking about basketball with me today. A lot of crazy stuff has happened in the NBA at the time of this recording, so it was really nice to just bring someone on and talk about it. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, and if this is your first time watching the BaseLINE, go check out my other videos as well. Put a lot of time into them. If you guys enjoyed the music, as always, go check out Hand Harmony. Link for them will be in the description below. And with all that being said, guys, thank you again so much for tuning into this episode of the BaseLINE podcast. I'm your host, Ben Newman. And we'll catch you guys next time.